Hello, hello.
Hello,
You-
hello. Couldn't find any tape to my forehead, otherwise I would have done it for sure.
Well, now you just
And
need
yes,
to,
that was my last minute improvement.
yeah, you need to just put that on your face the whole time now. Let me kick off the session. Whoop, that didn't work. There we go. All right, and chat, can you hear Remy? Okay, Remy, can you share how you're feeling?
Tired? Very tired, but all right.
Okay. Sir Puffin? Okay. Well, if the audio doesn't ever sound good for part of this, just let me know if I sound louder than Remy or vice versa. Yeah, so why
Also,
don't we kick this off? Hmm?
if you can hear some children yell outside, let me know and I'll go and close the window. But preferably not because it's very hot in here. But they're being really loud, so
I
if it's
I
an
don't
issue,
hear
let me know.
anything, but yeah, maybe chat will at some point.
All right, good.
So
Then
yeah,
I'm ready to start.
yeah, you said you're unprepared for today.
Oh man, I've been unprepared for anything lately, so this isn't an exception. Uh, Yeah, mostly because, as you mentioned, I bought a house. I got the keys last month, and it's just been renovating all day, every day since then. So that's just, outside of work, that's just taking up all my time. Uh, so yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I knew it was today, but then you pinged me. I was like, oh yeah, it is today. I have to prepare for this as well. It's not just Adam doing stuff.
Well, but this
So
isn't okay. I don't mean this to make you feel bad or anything, but this isn't too different from normal, right? Don't you normally just type your notes like in the hour right before a session?
yes, but normally I think about it before I type it out, and this was just like, oh wait, what do I want to talk about today?
Okay, I see. All right,
So
well,
the action isn't different, but how I approach it is different.
yeah. That's totally fine. I think we can still find value for you today, and there are some questions that I had too. Let me just see really fast. Okay, yeah, there's a bit of lag between your audio and video, which I wouldn't worry about, but it sounds like audio levels are fine. So,
Okay.
virtual route setter, you said on complete hiatus, still planning to pick it up once life settles down. I think that's pretty much business as usual. Doesn't sound like anything's really changed there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
nothing's changed on that. Like it's still something I think about, and I really still want to continue, but just now is not the right moment for it. So,
yeah. I will say this. I think it's worth it that you realize that you can't fit this in right now because you've mentioned going all in on stuff. It would be really bad if you were like, wow, I'm already pushed to my limit, but I'm still going to find time to code. I think that would be just too much. Um,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Like if I get home right now, it's just, crash down on the couch and watch some movies or play some Final Fantasy 14 lately and just, full relax and not doing anything productive at home.
Yeah. And
So,
I think that's good. I think it's totally fine. How long do you think you'll be in this phase for?
I've been in it for a month now, and it will be at least another month.
Okay. Yeah. Probably another month. Um, So I mentioned to you last time that I think it's worth identifying when you're in a transition phase, and you've got a very obvious one right now. You just mentioned you just got the keys, you're renovating the house. Um, at some point, you will then be sort of transitioning back into whatever you consider normal Remy to be. And that's when, yeah, maybe you can start tackling an extra code project, or you'll feel more like your head is above water. And just keep an eye on that. Like you said, it'll probably be another month. It might be 2 months. It might be three. I hope it's not that long, but yeah, I hope you get all settled down and everything. Yeah, tell me about the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, no, it's great. So the house itself is actually fine. Like if I wanted to, I could have just straight up moved in. But the guy I bought it from lived there for 60 years. Like it was his first house, and the inside looked like he lived there for 60 years. I don't think he did much renovating over the years. So we completely took out all the ceilings, repainted all the walls, all the ceilings. There was actually a black ceiling beneath some woodwork that was in the ceiling. So that took like 10 liters of paint. It was crazy. So yeah, putting in new ceilings, isolating everything, painting everything, new floors, new everything. So yeah, but no, everything is great. I actually had some time early today to sit in the garden and take a bit of a breather, and I was like, oh, this is so nice having my own garden to sit in, and like it's nice and peaceful and quiet. And I met some neighbors, and they were nice. So yeah, no, really loving it already, even though I don't live there yet.
Well, that's good. Congratulations for sure.
Thank
How
you.
much of this work are
Thanks.
you doing yourself on the house?
Everything.
You're doing everything.
Yeah, well, together with my dad and some friends, they're helping me. But yeah, basically doing everything ourselves. The only thing that I will be having experts do is laying the floor
Yeah.
because like that's just expert work. I think I could do it, but it wouldn't be as nice and not as quickly as they can do it. So that's something I'm having contractors do. But everything else is just me, myself, and my friends and my father.
Okay. So this really further adds credence to the whole you're in a transition period, because it's not just, hey, I don't live there yet. It's I'm doing all of the work. So you mentioned when I get home, I'm playing Final Fantasy 14, I'm watching movies. When do you get to your, I guess now your old home? Is it after work, or do you go from work to work on the new house?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I took 1 day a week off. I got Wednesdays off now, and I spent the entire Wednesday. So today, for example, in the new home, working on it. Well, like on days like this, usually until dinner. Then I
Mm-hmm.
have dinner at my own home, and then I just go to chilling mode for the rest of the evening. But on normal weekdays, it's work, eat something somewhere quickly, go to the new home, get some stuff done, and then get home late in the evening.
Wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
then weekends is also there, spent there basically.
Okay. Well,
And I also try to keep a social life in between. So like on the evenings that I'm not in the new home, I'm trying to spend with friends or going to the gym or doing something not at home usually.
you sound busy. This is the kind of thing that I think it all comes down to how you feel about all of this. Do you feel overwhelmed by any of this, or are you more excited by it?
Both. I'm very excited by it though, like a good kind of excited. But there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, how am I gonna do it again?
Is it overwhelmed by the I guess complexity of the work or the amount of work? Like, because there can be different feelings of being overwhelmed. How would you describe your feeling of being overwhelmed?
Yeah, most of like the amount where I'm like, oh, like I want to be at this point right now, but I'm only there yet. And I've got this much more to do. And I'm like, I got some deadlines, because I've also sold my own home. So I got to get out at some point. So I'm like, oh, how am I actually going to do this? Kind of overwhelmed. And then also a part where I'm like, I don't want my entire life to just be either work or renovating right now. But like, I want to keep a bit of a social life going on. I'm like, how am I going to plan this in?
Okay, do you feel you mentioned last time about going all in on stuff? This is one of the cases where I feel like you almost have to, because like you said, you
Yeah.
sold your other place already. So at some point you're not going to have a third place to live. Although, have you considered that you could stay with a friend or your dad or whatever, somewhere else for some time and not have that pressure?
I mean, I would if I absolutely have to, but I would rather not.
And okay, so if this will sound like a leading question, but if the two if the two options are basically like feel crushingly overwhelmed or stay with someone else and get an extra week of time, you would still choose like just be overwhelmed and go through all
Yeah.
the work. Okay.
Yeah, like going somewhere else is a last resort option, basically. Like place burned down and we have to rebuild everything again. That's when I would stay at someone else's place again. But no, I want it to be done because I know also for myself, like if I don't have this deadline and I have another place to go to, I'll try to be too perfectionistic about it. I'd be like, oh, like I got another week anyway, so either I can postpone something or I can spend more time on something, and then we come back to like the 90%, 10%
Yeah.
stuff, and I'd probably get caught up in like the last 10% again, and now I have to go at some point, and if I don't, then I'm screwed. Well, not really, but get the point.
Well, so you have then this deadline is essentially what's forcing you to say that's it, the work is done. Although,
Yeah,
like you said, it doesn't have to be. You could always vacate a room and say I'm gonna take care of that room while you're living there,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
So
That is a possibility.
so when is that deadline of when you sell your current place or move
So the
out?
28th of August. So there is still 2 months to go until then.
Okay. So then what made you say that in 1 month you think this will have died down?
Because I am aiming for that basically. And I think so. This is like in 1 month, I'll basically be at the point where I can live in the home. So like the living room will be done, the kitchen will be done, toilets, bathrooms, and like my main bedroom will be done in like a month. But
Yeah.
there's like still two other rooms. There's an attic, there's a garden, there's like lots of other stuff I still need to do. But those aren't necessary for living there, so I can take like the other month or even longer for that.
Got it. I recommend the even longer part because otherwise I feel like look, we're getting toward the end of the mentoring sessions in general, not the end of this current one, but if what we've identified as of last time was, hey, you find it difficult, you find yourself overwhelming yourself with tasks, with activities that you're doing, at some point we need to try to pump the brakes on that somehow and get some coping mechanism for it or find some way of dealing with it. Otherwise, I feel like we'll have had, 8 or 9 chatting sessions, and I'll be like, all right, maybe what did you learn from all this? And you're like, I learned I have these problems. And maybe this indicates that stopping at 6 to 9 sessions is a bad idea. But there's, like I said, I think the house is sort of an extenuating circumstance. But when this also applies to your job, to climbing, to video games, to other things, I think there's got to be something we can potentially do. So, how hard was it for you to say that in about a month you'll have gotten all the livable stuff done, so I'll go live there? Was it tempting for you to say, no, I want to get everything done ahead of time?
Yeah. If I could, I would have had everything done by then. But I also realized that's just not realistic. So there's no other choice basically. But if I had the choice of like spending another month in agony and it would all be done by then, I would probably have picked that.
Yeah, I see. Even if it meant agony. Well, yeah, I think some amount of, I mentioned this last time, some amount of moderation. If you feel like you're always going pedal to the metal, that you've got to pull back somehow. And how you pull back can be maybe a creative puzzle. And in this case, it's like, okay, well, you're going to move there. Do you, and like you said, you think things will die down after that, but then how long what's your schedule for tackling the rest of this work? The attic, the outside, the,
I mean, there's some things that need to be done. Like there's a small leakage in the attic, so that actually should be done before the end of summer.
yeah.
But all the other things, I'm like, if it takes a year, if it takes 2 years, I'll get to it when I need to.
Okay.
So I don't really put a lot of pressure on myself to finish those.
Okay, good.
As long as it's livable, if it's like one of the side rooms, I can close the door, I don't see it, and I'll probably be bothered by it, but I don't feel like I have to finish it ASAP.
Okay, that's good. I wanted to make sure you weren't feeling constantly pressured by that too. There are some other things that I would say that are considerations here. One, you are using the help of other people, and the more you use those people's help, the more goodwill you're burning through. But I wanted to focus on the positive of that, which is you're spending time with your dad. Are you bonding more? Is this like a normal thing that you take on projects together? Was he like, all right, fine, son? How did that
Uh,
go?
yeah, it goes all kind of ways. We don't really do a lot of this kind of stuff together. But it is nice to see him more often, of course. But we also do clash heads a lot of time over things. Where he's like, "Oh, we gotta go left," and I'm like, "No, we gotta go right." And then he's like, "I've done it 10 times." I'm like, "But it's my house." So
Okay, but overall,
yeah,
would you
no,
say it's been
yeah, no, I really appreciate his help. He's a great guy. So overall, it's definitely positive.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, I wanna keep an eye on this. We'll probably, let me think about this. Yeah, we'll probably have another session before you have completely moved out of the old place, or anyway, it's somewhere around then.
It will be on the edge. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm also going to be taking some time off in August, but I wanted to see if I could catch you still in this in between phase and see, and if it works out, it works out. If not, then whatever. I'll talk to you after it. All right, so work has been taking up the bulk of the rest of your time. You did that other Azure training, which is your second one,
First one, yeah.
first one.
The
Oh,
the next point is the Azure introduction training, and it was a complete waste of time. I don't know. I've never seen choice words. It was just
thank you for not
I
saying
I,
those
I
choice
just
words.
yeah. I sat there for like 2 hours and I'm just like, this is a sales pitch. This is not a training. Like, how dare they call this a training? Yeah, no, it was not worth my time. And I told my colleagues the same thing. I hope the next trainings will be better. But, it kind of put me off of planning the next training because, like, what if they're as bad as the other ones?
Wait. Okay, okay, back up. There were supposed to be 3 Azure trainings this year, right?
Yeah, and it was first of the three. I still have to do the other two, but I postponed them.
But I thought you had a coworker who did this one and thought it was great, or did they do a different one?
Yeah, I guess in the end they were thinking about a different training they did. Because I asked him about it, I was like, was it this and this? And he was like, no, I did that and that. So, I guess with the number, you got like the AZ 109 and the 210 and whatever it's called. I think we probably got some numbers mixed up at some point. So this one was on the agenda of like the codes we had to do. It was like an introductory training, but I felt like more like a sales page where they just, went like over the global Azure environment. And they were like, oh, like this is a network tunnel and, it's used for networking. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. I know that. And it was
Yeah.
like, that kind of level stuff. Yeah, and I think the other ones will probably be better, but I was like, okay, I wasted a lot of time on this, so I used that as an excuse to postpone the other trainings basically.
Yeah. Well, look, that's unfortunate for a couple of reasons. One, you have to do them by the end of the year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Two, you said there was a mix up in which training was which, but your coworker did one of the required ones and liked it, which means that
Yeah.
of the remaining two, there's a 50%
They're
chance
probably
that you're
better.
in the good one. And
Yeah,
possibly
that's for
the
sure.
other one is it's unknown, but it could also be good, right?
Yeah, actually, I think I did look into the one he did at some point, but I think like they were only like trainings like in Canadian time zones, and I had to like stay up to like 2 p.m. or midnight to midnight, to get it done. I was like, yeah, I'm not that dedicated to my work.
Right. No, no, no. I don't recommend doing that, but there are ones in I'd say like better time zones for you, right?
No, so when we looked, like they were non-available. So at some point we were like, oh yeah, we just have to like look in like a month time or something again.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, like we thought it was strange as well because like when my colleague did it, like it was like in Belgium somewhere, so you could actually just drive there, do it classically. But when I looked, they just were none in like European time zones, so that
Okay.
was also one of the things we ended up postponing. But that was like after me postponing it for like another month already that I finally started checking times for new trainings.
Yeah, well, look, I feel bad about that. Like I said, this is a required thing. And part of this was you mentioned that some tasks at work are potentially taking you longer as a result of not having the training. You had that big C++ refactoring that you had to do. I think this is one of those things that is like it's like watching a tragedy happen. You sort of need to take these trainings. Well, in one case, you do need to take them. In another case, they'll really help you. And yet you just had a bad experience that's now making you feel like, well, no, maybe I'm not going to take them or I'll postpone them. And yet we needed to be the opposite way. We needed to be like, oh, hey, you took the training, they gave you a cupcake and they, patted you on the head on the way out. And you're like, this was great. And I'd love to take another one of those. How, like, you postponed it. You just looked into the time. What happens if for the next 3 months there aren't good times? At what point do you say I've just got to take this? Do you email the people and ask about it?
No, I'll probably ask my manager to fly me out to Canada at that point.
Well, is that what it would come down
You know,
to? Would you stay up till 2
I mean,
a.m.?
yeah, I mean, like, I would be like at some point, like, okay, you want me to do it? I'm not gonna stay up until like 3 a.m. to do it. So you either fly me there or you remove it from my curriculum this year.
Okay.
Because then I also get a nice vacation out of it. So gonna make the most of it.
Uh, Let me think about this for a second. So I suspect that this other training that your colleague did is probably worthwhile. You said this one was more like a sales
Yeah.
pitch. Was there anything important about it? Was there anything interesting?
No,
Okay.
maybe it's like I'll be fair. Like maybe at some point it became interesting, but I stopped paying attention at that
Okay.
point and started working on other things when I
Oh,
was like, okay, this is a sales
oh
pitch.
boy. So if Ramy gets burned in the first 10% of something, he'll tune out. um, yeah. Look,
I mean, like I kept I stayed in the training pool. I just started my daily work while listening in. Like if I was like, oh, this might sound interesting, I'd like focus on it. But yeah, they lost my attention like half an hour in or something of like a 3 hour training. So
yeah. And look, I'm not necessarily saying that part's a bad thing. I think the bad thing is that now you've felt burned by it, so now you're less likely to take the trainings that
yeah,
might be worthwhile. I recognize that not every meeting, not every training is going to be valuable. So tuning out is sometimes the best thing you can do. And you were getting other work done during that time. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it's hopefully these other trainings are good. And like you said, you're going to be working mostly in Azure. So this training should be directly relevant to your work. Uh, but
yeah.
okay, yeah, let's just kind
And
of
I think
see how that goes.
one of the things that also feels like I don't have much pressure to do it right now is that our entire company isn't yet Azure based. We're still
Hmm.
transitioning towards Azure. Like we just kicked off last week, I think, like the migration to everything, and it's gonna take like half a year or more. So I'm like, I know I should probably know about it in advance, but I'm also kind of one of those guys that's like, okay, I'll run into a problem and then I'll research the solution to it rather than like take the trainings up front.
Yeah,
So that's
but
also what alleviates the pressure a bit.
that's what's caused a different problem in the past, right? That's you got yourself into
Yeah.
the C++ refactoring thing, which then ended up taking a lot longer because you were trying to learn as you went. So,
Yeah.
um, it's six of one, half a dozen of another, both being bad problems. You kind of have to see which problem is worse, maybe. And
Yeah, no. And the problems I run into are definitely worse because not wanting to take a training is the problem. It's an attitude problem. So yeah, no, like I should definitely take the training beforehand.
Okay, so I'm gonna maybe beat a dead horse here, but um, you've now said I should probably take the training, um, but there might not be a time zone thing that works. So could you maybe just send an email to these people and say, hey, will there be a more EU friendly time coming up in the next couple months?
Yeah, I definitely could.
Okay, will you do that?
Making no promises, Adam.
All right, suggested homework item: email the coordinators of this thing and ask if there's an EU friendly time coming up. Look, the reason I say this is because I think this is the easiest possible thing you can do that's still a step forward. And I think that
Yeah,
by doing this, if they're like, oh, yeah, there is one coming up, it's on August, whatever, 16th, and you could just sign up then for it. And then that's it. You're locked in. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully it starts giving you positive reinforcement here because I think we all have patterns. And I think it's when you identify a negative pattern that's hurting you and then don't address it, that's when probably other people start noticing them, and then the influence of that negative pattern starts increasing. So
yeah.
yeah, let's see if we can curtail that a little bit. And if not, hey, I mean, right, this is all trying and it's a best effort kind of thing. And I know you're overwhelmed by everything else, and that's why I say, like, look, sending an email should be a pretty easy work time task you can do.
No, I do these mentoring sessions for a reason. I want to improve it, so I'll try to get this done
Okay.
before the next session for sure.
I'd be very surprised if the time to come up with an email did not arise naturally. But okay, yeah, I think if you write it as a reminder or something for yourself, I think that'd be good. And if that doesn't
You
pan
know,
out, I mean, maybe they say something like, "Look, we're not planning on that. They're all going to be Canada. Our instructors are located in Canada." But yeah, then at least you know, and now you don't need to keep checking every month. That it might actually save you some time.
yeah, and also this is something I also need to work on. I need to set up more notes or like reminders about these kind of things because honestly, like I read up through our notes like an hour before we started this session. I was like, oh yeah, I need to do those training. For the last couple of weeks, I completely forgot to put this as well. So it's a note taking thing for me as well that I need to work on.
All right. Well, this is why it's good that at least one of us is taking notes here. You'd forgotten about the required trainings. Actually, that's not
Just
possible
say,
that you'd forgotten about them, though, right? Because you looked into the timings.
yeah, no, but like like the last 2 or 3 weeks, I forgot about. Like I looked into those times like a month ago, before I
Oh,
got
I
sick and
see.
the home keys and everything. So like it's not something I get like a weekly reminder about. Like, hey, Remy, start looking into this already because time's running out.
So I like to do. I just kind of posted about this on Discord, but I do a few things. One, the fastest possible way is I can just hold down a button on my phone. It opens up the assistant, and I say, "Remind me in 3 days to do whatever." That's the fastest possible way. But I also just use the calendar quite a lot. Do you use your phone assistant?
So
Okay, out of curiosity, why don't you?
I don't know. I use the calendar, but I don't use like voice spoken thingies on my phone or anything.
Okay.
Like I don't really use the assistant.
Yeah, they're both tools for the same task in this case, which is setting
Yeah.
reminders. So if you use your
No, yeah,
calendar,
I use calendar
yeah,
extensively, especially at work.
in this sort of case, what I like to do, if there's a training you need to take and you're just like, I want to do this at some point in the future, I don't know when, I would set a recurring reminder on a very weird interval, so like 37 days, and just say like, have I taken the training yet or something, and that's it. And then once it's done, you can delete the entire series, but that way you can ignore individual instances and know that it's still being saved for you to look at in the future. So maybe, yeah, I'll just write that down. You could try recurring reminders at a weird frequency, like 37 days. Alternatively, if you know that there's a deadline for it, I just I just set a calendar reminder before the deadline. So I've got a bunch of like subscriptions we need to cancel and those sorts of things where it's like, oh, you're going to lose money if you don't just click a button online. So yeah. Okay. I won't harp on that stuff. I think it's good that you are at least aware of these sorts of things, and look, wanting to try to change this and being open-minded for this might have good results, I think is the important mindset I want you to have. So when it comes to this training, it's like this next one might be good. Hopefully it is. And hopefully it teaches you. And hopefully then what would be ideal is that you connect the dots to, I took this training so that I encountered a problem in practice and I solved it because of the training, or mostly because of the training, or something like that. It put me in the right mindset. It gave me the right tools. So I think that would help out quite a lot. And if you don't see that if you don't connect those dots, then you'll just be like, yeah, I took a training, it was random, then I encountered a problem, I would have solved it anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Loop on training equals good. Training helps solve problems that show up during work. Cool. All right. Duolingo going strong, 142-day streak. Some of this has been just keeping up the streak lately. Do you feel like you're still learning Spanish?
So
You don't.
just keeping it like I still want to, but like I said, like I'm just being too much headspace going to other stuff where I'm like, I want to keep my streak up right now. So, I'll do the bare minimum to keep it going, which is a bad habit, I think. Uh, but I do still, you mentioned the Pokemon thing earlier. I still want to do it at some point when I have more free time.
Yeah. That makes total sense.
It's also like I feel like the one thing that streak helps me is like a daily reminder of, oh yeah, this is a thing you want to do. So it's like the calendar reminder on a daily basis, basically.
So let's say you dropped your streak. Let's say I know Duolingo has like streak freezes and stuff, but let's say you ran out of whatever, all of those things, and 5 days from now you were at a 0-day streak. What would that mean for you?
Oh, probably dropping it.
You would just
and
stop learning Spanish completely.
No, well, for now, yeah. I do still think it's fun to do the daily thing. Like I'm not too worried now. Uh, like I think having that streak is a good motivator for me. So I feel like losing it would lose a bit of motivation. Uh, but I also think like it's still fun to do the daily bit of thing. And I think like I still pick up new words every now and then. But like learning words isn't learning a language. And like to actually learn the language, I need to do more with it, like engage with the language. Like I said, like play a game in it or something. Uh,
Yeah.
and this is more of like a reminder for me now, like, hey, you want to do this at some point? You're busy right now, but you're doing this thing. Keep it up.
Okay, so I have a thought, and this is me just kind of thinking out loud here. If you were to drop the streak, you said you would stop Spanish for now. Stopping Spanish for now actually sounds like the best idea, given how busy you are with everything else. However, this is also not taking up a lot of your time. I'm guessing it's like, what, 4 minutes or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But that's still 4 minutes in between these other things you have to do. And what I've learned about myself is that the ideal, like if you were to follow sort of every instruction about being a healthy person, so you're brushing and flossing your teeth, you're cleaning up around the house, you're doing whatever, to pick up any number of tasks, each of those takes a small enough amount of time on its own. But when you do all of those things, then they take up way too much time. It's like, have you ever bought a device and you looked at the maintenance instructions? I got a humidifier
Yeah.
and it says to clean it like every week. I don't know who cleans it every single week, right? It's like, yes, ideally you would do that. I think it's the same thing here where it's like, yeah, in order to keep up Spanish, you probably need, I don't know how many minutes per day to actually be on an upward trajectory, but more than 1 minute,
Yeah.
right? You probably can't learn a
Yeah.
language on 1 minute per day. So I don't think this is probably providing much value from my outsider point of view. And you mentioned it's fun, but whatever other 4 minute activity you do would probably also be fun. So in my mind, and again, this is what all of this is boiling down to. In my mind, this is one of those cases where you can try relinquishing a tiny bit of sort of control here to try to not go as all in on stuff. So I would just put all that food for thought onto your side of the table now. And if you choose to consume it, that's totally fine.
And I did get to 150 before I stopped. That's a nice number.
You remember the slippery slope you mentioned earlier, where if you had a longer deadline for your house, you would have just kept doing more stuff? 150 is going to turn into, well, 200 is an even rounder number, and 500 is even better. And then you're going to be on your deathbed saying, well, at least my streak is, 4,000, whatever. I don't know. Also, that implies you're dying in 10 years.
I was gonna say there's not a lot of
Yeah,
years
it's not a
left,
lot of time.
but,
I just picked an arbitrarily large number.
glad you want to see me grow old.
So
I
yeah,
mean, no, but that's a fact because like I am like, oh, I should like I have considered like dropping it, but I'm like, oh, but like 150 is such a nice number to hit, and I'm like, I should go for that, or like, so it's definitely something that that is me for like keep going, keep going, keep going.
I
I'm like,
get it,
oh, but
and yet, like I said, at some point, it's you've identified your patterns and you're sort of feeding the pattern now. And I'll also give you this as a consideration. There is, if you consider just a timeline, and there's a point in time which is you lose your streak. The beforehand you sees this as like a mountain to climb, like, oh man, that's gonna be tough. I'll lose my streak. The after you, speaking from experience, does not care whatsoever. It's like, here's a number that didn't make it to 150, and it leaves your mind so quickly that it's not an important thing. So anyway, this is all subjective, and this might mean a whole lot to you that hasn't been communicated here. And my father's last wish on this house or something was for me to get to a 150-day streak in Spanish. I don't know, but I don't see it as being that intense. So yeah, just consider what would it mean to just drop it and not hit this arbitrary goal you have.
Yeah, no, I would, be bummed for a couple of minutes and then indeed forget about it. Like I've done other things that I could treat. I was like 360, like 5 days off from a year, and then I lost it, and I was like, I'm bummed, and I didn't remember until you just mentioned it. So
Yeah, you know what this is similar to for me? When I was playing video games 20 years ago, I would try to 100% practically all the games that I played. And at some point I realized like, why am I doing this? At most of these games give you like a like, hey, you did it, or here's an item that's fun that you can now use even though you've already beaten the entire game, so you have no reason to use it. And I realized at some point, I'm like, if I'm not having fun, why would I do this thing? And I think the same thing applies here. If I'm not learning, or if it's not accomplishing a better goal or something. So I'll stop harping on this, but I will say this: if you do drop it, just make a calendar reminder to pick it up again.
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the video game thing because that's me in Final Fantasy right now, where I'm a really big achievement hunter, and I'm like just finished like the third expansion. It's like three more, and I'm like, but I want to do all the stuff I can do in this one first. I'm like ignoring all of the game, doing like super achievements.
But that's fun for you, right? And if that's
Yeah,
fun,
no, but I enjoy it. I
yeah.
like it's I enjoy doing that. So it's
What I was saying is I had fun 20 years ago 100% in games, and then I realized I have more fun playing just different games and getting to whatever 37% or 60% or so. Yeah, I my overall point is make sure that your actions are serving some purpose in your life. It can be fun, it can be relaxation, it can be productivity, but they should probably be
no,
serving some purpose.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, give me 10 seconds to grab my water bottle
Sure, sure,
because I
sure.
forgot to grab it.
Okay.
It should have been under 10 seconds.
So this next thing, cutting myself some slack, hard to do, was out of office for an
Yeah.
entire month between being sick and having 2 weeks off for renovating. And that's the 2 weeks off for renovating. You're not just saying 8 Wednesdays in a row, right? Or whatever, 10 Wednesdays in a row. You're talking about two.
No, that is two trade
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah. So yeah, the timing of that was really unfortunate. I got sick for like, as you mentioned, the 14th time this year, and like it was a gruesome one at this time. So I was just straight up out for 2 weeks. Couldn't do anything. Went back to the office for one day and actually had a training that day. Not the actual one, was first aid respondent at like the office thingy.
Mhm.
Went back for that, and I had like my 2 weeks off. And I just felt really bad for that. I'm like, the entire team is like missing me for a month. Like the departments I support have to, do without me for an entire month. And I try to not look at my mailbox, but you see like your mailbox slowly growing. You're like, okay, I gotta clear this backlog at some point. So that gave me some stress for sure. I'm like, even though my manager was like, you can't do anything about getting sick. Don't worry. We'll be fine. We'll manage without you. But yeah, it's still I give myself this pressure of like, you're away for a month. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It just feels bad for me.
Okay. A few things I want to talk about there. One, this is the least important, but for whatever reason, you said there was a first responder training. Is this like a fire code sort of thing that you're talking about, or is this?
Yeah,
Okay.
basically. So,
Okay.
so like,
Just check. Yeah. Okay. Then the time off. So this is something that I was just talking about before our mentoring session started, that I think that people sort of like you, like Peter, for example, hold themselves to very high standards and then want to deliver on standards, whether or not they're realistic. And in this case, it's like, you got sick. You shouldn't do work when you're sick. As a result, if your manager were like, oh man, but we really needed this, this is such a shame, I'd be like, okay, maybe there is an expectation of this. But your manager said the opposite. Hey, we'll manage without you. You're sick. Don't worry about it. And what did your manager say about taking the 2 weeks off in addition to that? Were they like, oh man, this is a real bummer. We're going to be suffering over here. Like, what was their messaging to you?
no, I even considered postponing my weeks off by a week so I could do some work in the meantime. He just called me an idiot and told me to take it off anyway. So
Yeah.
he
Okay.
was like, no, you're taking this time off, and I'm not hearing anything else. So
Okay. So, you have a very direct, is your manager Dutch?
well, it was I'm kind of
Oh,
paraphrasing, but that's what it
okay.
came down to.
Well, in like session number one, you mentioned that I guess this was like a
You,
Dutch.
you could say it like he could say it like that, but this was paraphrasing. But we are direct like that. Where it's like don't be stupid. It's not your fault. You got sick. You took this time off. You're gonna take it off. Your house is more important than your job. And this is still paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
that's basically what it came down to.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying. But the general messaging is very, very clear, right? It's,
Yeah,
hey, take this time. Not, hey, we need you. Hey, you're letting this stuff drop. Hey, this is going to show up in your performance report. It's not anything like that. And so this still goes back to, you have a standard that you set for yourself, and it's important to you that you were there or that you were doing work, and you wanted to restructure what your manager was pretty much like, do not do this, just go take care of your house. Like, this is a life experience for you, you're going to do this. So I think what we need to focus on, have you been reading by any chance? There's been some talk of stoicism in Discord, and this was in like the books channel or something like that.
yeah. I read the messages.
Okay.
We actually had a speaker at work like 4 months ago about like stoicism and stuff like that.
What did you
So I
take
know
from the
some things about
speaker?
it. I think I'm quite a bit of a stoic when I was listening to him. Uh, but yeah, I don't really see the connection with what he talked about, at least in this.
Okay. Um, what I was going to get at here is, uh, a lot of, I think the philosophy is, you control yourself. You control nothing else. And life will throw random obstacles at you, random benefits at you. Just anything could happen. And it's your reaction to things that is something you can actually manage. And in this
Yeah,
case, it was, um, you have these high standards, and yet it's not life throwing that at you. It's actually you kind of creating the thing that then you have to respond to yourself. And I think it's a vicious cycle, because in your head it's important, and convincing yourself that it's not is almost unreasonable. And I find that the reason why it's hard to do that is because you've probably linked it to something else in your mind that you're proud of. And so I want to examine that and see if that's actually true. So for example, let's say it was like, hey, I'm on time to things. And this is generally how I am. I'm on time to things, and I value that. Well, there's a reason why I value it. It's not just being on time. It's like, oh, I see this as a sign of respect, and I want to show that I'm respectful of other people. So you wanting to be at work, what do you think is driving that?
I think just I think pride is indeed a factory of it, because I'm proud of the work I do. I like helping people. I like being around people. I like contributing to something. In this case, work.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a bit of an obligation to like my team and the people I support. To be there. Uh, you know, to help them basically.
Okay. Um, if you weren't there, what do you feel these people would say about you?
I don't know. Probably not much. As long as there's probably either they forget about the issue they had, or someone else will pick it up if it's like really urgent, and they'll probably move on, and maybe they make like a joke when I get back. They're like, "Oh, look who's back," or something like that. But I haven't heard any of that. Actually, I had some really positive feedback, or at least yeah, I guess it's positive feedback. Some people come to me like, "Oh, like, hey, where have you been? Like, I didn't see you in the office for like quite some while. Were you sick or something?" And I thought that was really nice, and like assuring, like, "Hey, people noticed I wasn't there. Came to like ask how what happened." So I thought that was positive.
That is positive. I want to push this a step further. So that was you being out for sickness and then taking the time off. Now let's say a month passes and there's nothing wrong. You're just not doing your work. What do you think people say about you then?
Yeah, not much, not any negative things. I don't think.
Okay, if a year passed, I'm intentionally pushing this to like a ludicrous amount, but if a year passes and you're just literally not showing up to work, what are people saying about you at that point?
Probably have forgotten about me.
Okay, so I actually disagree. I think that probably after a month of you just not showing up for your job, your manager would probably be like, "Hey, this is not okay," right? There'd probably be some disciplinary action.
Oh, oh yeah, no. I mean, I thought like the manager was like aware of it, like if something was up, that
No,
they did
no,
not show
no.
up.
You're just
Okay,
slacking,
like
let's say.
I just snap my fingers and I disappear basically.
No, not even you disappear. Just you, like, obviously it wouldn't get to the point where, 10 years has passed and no one's reached out to you. But let's say you didn't show up to work for a day. They might just assume you're sick. But if you don't show up for
Yeah.
a week, they probably wouldn't assume anything. They'd probably ask you a question and find out
Yeah,
what's wrong.
yeah,
And if you just said like, sorry, I'm just not feeling it. At that point, people would start to say things, and they probably would start to get more negative. And that's sort of what I'm trying to get to here is, what do you
yeah.
think
Okay, sorry.
people would say if you were to just like slack off and
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, sorry. I misunderstood the
No,
question.
no, no,
Like,
totally
yeah,
fine. Yeah.
I think, I mean, like you said, if for a day, probably just like, okay, get well soon. For a week, my manager probably, ask like, hey, what's up? Is there anything we can help with? After a month, they'll probably, try and get help. Like maybe get HR involved, and like not in a negative way, but like see, hey, what's up? How can we help you get back on track? And after like half a year, they'd probably be like, hey, we seriously need to talk about things, like if there are a lot going on, like can you just not cope with things, whatever, or are you just slacking off because you don't care and we need to fire you? I would guesstimate like probably after like half a year, they probably assume like disciplinary actions if there's like no good reason. But this is just you know really guesstimating.
Okay. That's actually very illuminating for me. I know this sounds like a ridiculous hypothetical, but essentially what I'm trying to poke at here is, at what point do fears about what people would say actually become what people would say? So for example, like Remy is a bad person. What would you have to do for people to say that? It's not nothing. There's not, it's not like there's no, you could start stealing from stores just on a daily basis. People would probably start saying like, okay, he's a bad person. The same thing happens in a work setting, right? There is a set of actions you can do that would actually get people to say, Remy is lazy, Remy is unreliable, those sorts of things. And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, again, you've created these standards in your head. By all means, it sounds like your manager's on board. The team is, if anything, positive about, hey, cool, you're back. You can help us with this stuff. And even in this wild hypothetical of you're gone for like 2 months, you said people would still be trying to help you, which is,
Yeah.
like, in my mind, great work culture, to know that they'd probably have your back even if you somehow had this terrible thing happen, or you just felt lazy for some amount of time. So I think what I'm getting back to here is, there is the rational and emotional side of responses to things, and you can want to do something and say, oh man, I need to be at work because of an emotional response, but the rational part of you could say, this is unrealistic, I need to actually spend time working on my house or something like that. I think the more you can acknowledge that you are the one creating these expectations for yourself, I think the more you can get into that own feedback loop of identifying when you're elevating your expectations beyond what's feasible. Does all that make sense? What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and I think that's a nice illustrative way to put it as well. Not something like I had considered, seeing like, okay, it's like a emotional response versus a rational response, because normally you need, like, if I get sick, I'll still try to do some work from home or whatever, but like this time I was really sick, so I just didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel bad for not doing, because I like, okay, I'm actually really sick right now. I just physically can't work. So I didn't really feel bad for that. Like the only thing I felt bad was need like the emotional part where I'm like, my colleagues are gonna have to do more work now.
Yeah. Emotionally still has a response. Okay. So uh the broader sense of all of this is, in this case we have a specific example, right? You mentioned that you were sick, you mentioned you didn't feel guilty about that, but you did feel guilty about the renovation part, and you said, oh, I can push this off, I can do different work, and your manager said no, you're like nothing doing, you were coming in, or sorry, you're staying home. Uh and then you checked your inbox, I guess, which only added to your guilt, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So what I want to get to, and I'll just be very blunt about this. I want to get to the point where you can identify, is this helping you or is this hurting you? Just the expectation, because this was a very, very hard process for me to even identify, like, am I doing things just because I feel the need to do things, or is there actually a thing that needs to be done here? And dropping items from my to-do list was very tough, but it was like a necessary thing. Otherwise these lists would just grow forever. And that's why I mentioned Duolingo as a microcosm of this. It's a small example of a thing that if you dropped, I don't think you'd feel very bad about. And yet it's the same exercise you have to perform, but on a much bigger scale when it comes to things like work, house, life, social aspect, etc. So please do ponder this stuff. And here's one last concrete suggestion I'll give you on this, which is, consider like a 2-week calendar reminder with just a link to this document to read through it when it's not right before a mentoring session, and just see, does any of this, is all of this, water just completely washing off of you, or is any of it sticking and you want to talk about it more or something like that? So yeah, consider
Sounds good.
for a 2 week reread this without it being right before a session. I want to see if any of this resonates with you. Okay. Any other thing you want to talk about there, or I can move on to other bullet points?
Oh, so my next item is like I've been out for a month, and since coming back, I actually feel quite good about the work I do. I feel like I've been back for 2 weeks now. Of course, the first week is catching up on everything. It's like 600 emails. That's you gotta maybe do something with, or at least like skim through to see if you have to do something with. So there's a week lost on just that. But like last week, I feel like I got quite some things done. So of course, like the C++ remodeling project I've been working on, I actually got some major part of that done. I was really struggling with before my break. Uh, so I felt like I probably needed this longer stay away, which probably resulted in a net positive.
Okay. Um, I asked you last time. I think I said, "Hey, when was the last time you took a vacation?" And I think you said never.
Basically.
Basically, okay. Um, does this not sort of reinforce the power of being away from something? And again, like rationally, I
Uh,
recognize there's an emotional response to here's why I don't want to do that in the moment, but you can look back and say
yeah,
like
it does.
this was good. Okay, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, this is something where I was talking to Peter in his mentoring session, I think the last time, and he said something like he took a 1 week trip and he learned like this reinforced for him that 1 week is actually not long enough to disconnect. 1 week is as long as it takes for your brain to finally get to the point where you're like, I can finally relax. I'm out of work mode. I don't have that stress of like it's Tuesday. Oh my God, I have to be at work. So I'm not necessarily talking about length of time. I'm just talking about you took some time and it helped. And like that's it, full stop. That's the whole sentence. So if you can think about that again for next year and be like, maybe I need to do, I don't know, another renovation project next summer or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll
Yeah,
just
no, for sure. Like because as you said, like my vacations usually are like a maximum of 2 weeks.
mhm.
So I think this is the first time in probably since I started working that I took more than 2 weeks off in one go.
Yeah. Uh, and I noticed the same thing about myself. I mentioned I went to Spain and then I got sick as well. That amount of time instilled a certain appreciation in me about what it is that I tend to do and what my normal life is. And it also gave me some time away from the tedium that I have, whatever chores and errands I had to run and get me on my own routine. So I think it's really good to do. And I think we need that variety. And especially there's another consideration I haven't really harped on stream before too much, but I feel like your life is very dynamic for the first maybe like 20, 25 years if you're on the traditional track. You go to school, you go to more school, you get a job, you start meeting people or getting a house or something like that. After that, the next 25 years, I'd say is largely the same for a lot of people. It's like, well, you had a job, so now you're just moving up in that job. You got a house, so now you're, making it more your own house. You're building out your family, that sort of thing. And I think that's another reason why getting some variety injected in there is good. And the best way to do that is just time off from something, work, your routine, anything. So yeah, please do consider all of this stuff as just like, hey, I I can take time off work. I had positive reactions from the people. No one was negatively affected. They were happy to see me back. I felt refreshed. I can tackle the work. I have a renewed mind, etc. Uh, this next one, nanograms are my new poison, and I blame you. I will happily accept the blame for this.
I've been really enjoying those. I feel like this. I kind of talked before about like doom scrolling. I want to minimize the idle time on my phone at least. Where like I have to wait for 2 minutes. I don't want to grab my phone. I want to be just stare at a blank wall for those 2 minutes instead of doing something on your phone. Yeah, nonograms is taking that time away now. I'm like, oh, I got a minute here. Let's take another look at that nonogram I'm stuck on.
Yeah,
But
I
giving you blame for that, is just a joke, of course. But
yeah.
no, it's filling my idle time. But at least I feel like this is, and this might just be copium. I feel like there's at least like some engaging brain work where like it's both fun, but you're also solving a puzzle, so you're purposefully thinking about something. which if there's like a ranking about like idle things to do is like doom scrolling, like
Yeah.
YouTube shorts is here, and you're like doing puzzles like here.
Yeah, it's better than just watching random YouTube videos, I'd say. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I think it's funny, you can push anything to an extreme. I just mentioned how I'd done this way too much while I was sick, and I looked at my phone's screen time, and it was
2000. That's a lot.
yeah, it was a lot of puzzles, and like sure, some of them are fast. It's not like I'm doing gigantic puzzles every time, but um yeah, anything can be taken to an extreme. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. I hope it doesn't, take over your life.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
This next
But
thing,
it's fun.
oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, no,
Oh,
go on.
okay. The management training program. So you mentioned, I think you said end of summer. Do you know like roughly when it is? Is like August sort of thing? Okay. Um,
No, I don't know yet. I actually have to follow up on this probably sometime soon. Because yeah, they would start after summer. They said
okay.
so. I would expect after August actually.
All right. Yeah. He thinks it'll be after August. The reason I ask is because I'd like to be able to follow up on this, and we'll probably have some time to do that. And if not, it's okay. I think you mentioned there's like a 5-year timeline on you taking over as a
Yeah.
manager, which is probably whatever we talk about now won't have too much of an impact. Uh, we've got some time, so I want to look through some of these things, and I want to start with this one actually. The how are you cutting yourself slack and being nice to Remy?
Sorry, I just choked on the all caps. Being nice to Remy.
Well,
Did not see
no,
that
really,
one
that's
come.
what it is,
Like
right? Yeah.
yeah, no, it is. But I was trying to fix my camera when you were typing this out, so I missed that part and it caught me off guard. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm still not too nice to myself. I don't think. I still, have high expectations of myself. Like it's the same thing with the house. Like I'm not a professional house renovator. I'm not a professional painter. I'm not a professional uh, woodworker or anything. But I try to, renovate my house perfectly. And I got my dad helping me. I got friends helping me. And if they mess something up, I'm like, it's fine. You're not a professional. You can mess up. We'll fix it, or I'll just have to live with it. And then I mess something up, and I'm like, you know, moron. How could you mess this up?
Yeah. Let me think about this for a second, because I was thinking for a sec of like, where does this come from? And I don't know if it's even productive to talk about, but I'll just finish the thought at least. Like, were you always this way? Do you notice a point in your life where this started happening more? Was there a teacher who was hard on you, or a parent, or some other figure you looked up to? And like I said, it might not even
No,
matter. What?
not really any of that. I think
Yeah.
I've always been like this, and it comes purely for myself, and it's something I've been thinking about a bit as well for myself. Like, hey, where does this drive, like this strive for perfection, come from? And I think a lot of this has to do with pride. I think I'm quite a prideful person, and just doing things well, it has to do with pride, I think, and not wanting to mess up, and like always want to be, the best I can be.
Do you fear making mistakes?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah. So, but it's also, I think I'm really on both ends of there. Like if I care, I really fear mistakes. But on the other hand, I can also be like, oh, I don't care about this. If it screws up royally, like so be it. And even if I, do fear making mistakes, if the mistake does happen, I don't tend to get too stuck on it. I can accept, okay, the mistake has been made, and now how do we fix this?
Yeah. Okay. Um, you've seen my tenant system, and I'm now down to like 3 or something, or 4, and one of them is embrace failure. And I mean it in like the nicest possible way, right? Which is that you will encounter difficulties. It's pretty much, it goes without saying. And how you recover from those difficulties is what's important, and not necessarily how you got to that point. Or it's like, what do you do once you're there? And for learning specifically, I think mistakes are the fastest path to learning. You're speaking in Spanish to somebody, you say the wrong word, they correct you. You're like, oh, that just tiny amount of like, oh, they felt the need to correct me. I should remember this for the future. Like that does something great for you. And it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't made a mistake. And then there are other things that, I don't know, we just aren't aware of what mistakes we're making and everything. Uh, when taken to the extreme, just like we were talking about nonograms, when taken to the extreme, a fear of mistakes can paralyze you and make you feel like I have to do things perfectly. I have to be the best at something, or I can't even pursue something if I'm not going to be good at it. Uh, Again, all this is just kind of like it's something to think about of what are your expectations doing for you and how can you be softer to yourself. And that's why I say this whole being nice to Ramy thing. If you've ever read a self-help book, I feel like it's, and I know I satirize this in my own stuff, but it's maybe like a paragraph of good advice that's expanded out into a book to just try to get something that makes you feel good about what you're learning. So if this being nice to Ramy thing is the thing that does it, it makes you think like, oh man, yeah, am I being nice to Ramy right now? Like it's something that sounds cheesy, but like it might be worth having in your mind of, am I actually helping myself with this?
Yeah, I think the issue there is that I am aware that I'm not nice to myself, and I am aware that if someone else would make the same mistake, I you know couldn't care less basically. But then acting upon it is different than recognizing it.
Yeah. Um, I think there are a few phases to this. I think if you want to change your behavior, one is identifying what that behavior is you want to change. Then the next is identifying when it happens and just when. That's it. Like literally, hey, wow, I just offered to go into work when I have this house renovation to do and it's already breaking my back. That's just a when thing. Then the next step I think is identifying why. Like why did I do that? And then the final step is identifying like what do I do to fix it? Like how do I not. So let's just get some awareness about this for now. And just, I'd say in the next month, really try to identify one or two times where you're not being nice to yourself. And maybe even ask yourself the question like, what would I do if this were somebody else? What would I do if I were trying to be nice to myself? And the answer is probably like you've had very level-headed, reasonable responses to other people, and other people have had those same responses to you. So I feel like you are healthy going outward, and other people are healthy going to you, but you are not healthy going to yourself. And yeah, that's something that I think is gonna probably hurt your mentality in the next, I don't know how long. Like it's just a thing to focus on.
I only got 10 years left, so
They only got 10
probably
years
get
left.
there.
I think about 4,000 days if I had to estimate. So, well, and I wrote this down as a way of bringing awareness to this. Do you want to try a tenant system? If you were to list like one or two tenants for yourself and then review them every so often, is that something you'd like to do?
hmm Yeah, I can give it a try. I'm always down for trying stuff at least.
Okay. Because I don't want to make your tenants, but here's what I would say then. For next time, present what you've come up with for this. So, which tenants, how long before you review them, and if you've tried it already, how did it go?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'd like to set it up probably like this week if I want to do it, so we can see if it helps next session rather than give you what I've come with. I can probably just send it to you when I come up with
sure,
them.
yeah, I'll send them this week. Yeah, that would be good. I mentioned earlier that maybe it'd be a good idea to write a reminder. I don't even know why I wrote this. Oh, this one. Consider a calendar reminder for 2 weeks about just rereading this. Maybe in 1 week you're rereading this and you're also coming up with these tenets. Again, the reason why I say this is I think bringing awareness to this is the first step. And it's certainly not the only step, but you'll be surprised by how much awareness will do. Have you ever done something like counted the calories of what you're eating?
No.
Okay. Um, that was just a common one that might have been the case. But I think a lot of people are surprised when they do something like that. Another common one I think is finances. Have you ever looked through your finances pretty extensively?
Yeah, for like the last 4 years, I keep like a monthly inventory of what goes in and out.
Yeah. And do you remember 4 years ago when you started, were there like some surprises? Because almost always there's something where people are like, I did not realize I was spending that much money here.
Uh, I don't think there are really surprises. Like I knew I was spending a lot of things on like food at the restaurant at work, for example.
Yeah.
But I am conscious of it, and I do it willingly, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
that's
there weren't really a lot of surprise. I think like except like financial is like a very specific thing, of course. But I'm really aware when and where I spend money, so there aren't really big surprises
okay.
there for me. But that's a specific thing, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Totally fine. There's just some examples, but I think with the tenants, you'll come up with them, and then maybe you'd be surprised at like, wait, now that I'm actually focusing on this, wow, I'm not nice to myself like 5 days out of the week or something like that, and that alone could be what triggers a hey, I need to do something about this. For me, one of these things, I mentioned this in a blog post I made a long time ago, but my wife went and saw a nutritionist, and the nutritionist said essentially like, hey, I'm surprised you're not diabetic. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't go to this nutritionist, but I know my own diet compared to hers. And I was like, that was basically the nutritionist talking to me. So I was like, I got to change something. And it just wasn't even on my mind until then. And then I started like analyzing, yeah, what I'm eating and everything. Uh, yeah, I think this is a really good thing to try. So yeah, I hope you do try out the Tenet system.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll give you a list soon.
yeah. And just to be clear, no more than 3, I would say, to start with. In fact, if you have 1 or 2, that's probably best. And as far as a review schedule goes, like every week or 2, maybe to take a look at it and really be honest about, am I upholding these? What could I change? What could I do differently? And yeah, we'll see where this goes, but I think this could help. I think we're right at the end of the session. So yeah, any last thoughts? Anything you want to share?
My nameplate, maybe again, so they're sure I'm Remy.
Okay, nice.
No,
Now,
I got nothing. I think
now
we talked about everything that was on the list.
Well, that's good. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Remy. I really appreciate you doing this. Again, I know this is, it's a very unique mentoring session in that it's very public and broadcasted. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've appreciate you, spending your time with me, going through this. So thank you.
All right. Well, good luck being nicer to yourself. I'll see you later, Remy.
Yep, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. You know the drill. Clap for Remy. Make sure I'm not going to share anything. Clap, 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 clap. Good job, Remy.